Hello, everyone. Welcome on. I'm Megan Hurst with the Iowa Communities Assurance Pool, and I have an interesting topic for you today. It is the topic of check fraud. This is something we being the ICAP team, it's something we found ourselves discussing a lot in recent weeks, particularly since the U.S. Postal Service put out a notice last month, essentially urging caution in mailing checks. If you're listening to this, you probably already know about that notice because it was picked up by virtually every media organization out there. And while we don't necessarily need to hear it from every organization, we do need to hear it at some point. We do need to be aware of this issue because it's something that affects many of us, myself included. Many of us still use checks in some form. From a pool perspective, from ICAP's perspective, we see a lot of our members still choosing to remit their contribution payment via mailed checks. They believe it's safer than electronic payment. And so I want to start today by saying that the belief that checks are safer than electronic payments is false. 100% to the top of the lines, it is false. In fact, credit cards are actually the safest method of payment out there. They're certainly safer than payment with checks, from which any bad actor with the tiniest bit of know-how, just a little bit of know-how, can pull enough information to steal your identity and even drain your bank account. In addition, bad actors or criminals, for all intents and purposes, they can steal checks and from there go any number of different routes. So they can deposit funds in false accounts. They can easily alter the recipient name and even the amount the check is made out for. They can basically wipe the check out and take it back to new. It is astounding, really, how unsafe checks are. It's interesting, too, because I remember when I was younger, and it was always a huge deal when I'd get a check for babysitting and the check didn't have the amount written out in text. This happened a lot when I was younger. You'd get the amount or the check and the amount box would be filled out, but the line where we're supposed to write it out in text would be completely blank. And it crossed my mind then, even as a child, how dangerous that was, how easy it would be to add an extra zero to the dollar amount and then just write in whatever I wanted in text. I never did that, of course, but that awareness, that danger, if you will, that awareness of the danger of that blank line was always there for me. And it's still a danger today. Flash forward to today, though, and most criminals aren't even wasting time with the extra zero. They're actually washing the checks. If you haven't heard of this process before, let me just give you a brief overview. The process of washing checks entails soaking checks in a special solution that removes the ink but leaves the check itself intact. So once the ink is removed, the person doing it, the criminal, the person washing the check will let the check dry, write it out, fill it out the way they want, and then go on their merry way, all with more money in their bank account. Some individuals actually take it a step further. They leave the check blank and sell it on. So they're washing the checks, they're stealing the checks, they're washing them, they're writing them out, and then they're selling those blank checks on to other individuals. I'd never actually heard of this myself until recently, but it turns out this is not a new crime. It's been around for decades, but in recent years, it's made a resurgence, if you will, because criminals have realized just how easy and lucrative it is to steal checks. It's made the concept, the crime of stealing checks has made such a resurgence that more than 300 mail carriers in the US were robbed in the 6-month period leading up to March 31st. 6 months, more than 300 mail carriers robbed in the US alone. In that same 6-month window, in that same time period, more than 25,000 cases of mail theft were reported. Those are huge numbers. That's crazy, isn't it? These check-related, criminal activities really ramped up over the last few years since the pandemic, really. When government checks were issued, remember those stimulus checks, they were issued and they were really an attractive target for criminals. So now, fast forward just a few years, now bad actors are stealing those checks basically by any means possible. They're taking from the blue USPS mailboxes that are out on roads and in parking lots. They're stealing from people's private mailboxes at the end of driveways and such. They're taking mail out of USPS delivery trucks, and they are literally robbing mail carriers. And most of it in the name of check fraud. So the number one recommendation to prevent this, you guys, the number one recommendation to protect yourself against it, just for what it's worth, is to avoid mailing checks. In fact, and I'm going to read this bit, the Advocacy Program Director for Consumer Reports suggests to pay things online wherever possible because doing so is safer and more secure than the alternative. It is literally more secure to pay through online means. And I know that's contrary to what many individuals believe, but in today's society, it's simply the case. So in keeping with that message, we strongly suggest all ICAP members cease issuing check payments immediately and instead go ahead and remit your payments, go ahead and remit your contributions to the pool via ACH, electronic bank transfer. Doing so is so easy and it's free. So we make it really simple for you. These payments can be submitted electronically via a link on the ICAP website. If you open up that member pay link, it's actually going to bring up a form where you can input your information and make a one-time payment, a one-time bank transfer. As I said, doing so is free. There's no additional cost. It's instantaneous. It's more secure than paying with a mailed check. It's really a win-win for all. So for now, we strongly encourage all members to begin doing that. Effective January 1 of 2024, we're actually going to begin mandating that payments to the pool be remitted via that online form. I realize that making that a mandate might be somewhat controversial, but honestly, it's simpler. It's safer. As I said, it's instantaneous. It just makes sense both for the membership and the pool. So for now, it remains optional, but it's highly, highly encouraged. Beginning January 1, all payments to the pool will need to be made electronically. Between now and then, we encourage everyone to do a little bit of reading on the topic themselves. We'll provide additional information on the matter. We'll do it via the monthly web updates. We'll have sit-down sessions to discuss the issues and exposures and, recommendations in more detail. But if you have questions in the meantime, or you want additional information, as always, we encourage any member representative or ICAP agent to contact their designated ICAP underwriter to discuss. As always, we appreciate your time, your attention, and your support. One way or the other, we look forward to communicating with you soon. Thank you.